Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the discussion with City University of New York today. Before we dive in, I just want to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Heather Fields, and I've been working on Giving Tuesday for 4 years. In 2013, I was the quarterback of a Giving Tuesday campaign for the city of Baltimore, which had a goal of raising $1 million. And we had hundreds of small nonprofits across the city participate. Our civic leaders participated, and we also were joined by higher ed community leaders in our campaign. And I'm really proud to say we successfully raised nearly $6 million on that single Giving Tuesday. It was a tremendous accomplishment, definitely took a village to make it happen. And since that time, I've been sharing some of the tools and resources that we used for our campaign with leaders across the country. And for the last 2 years, I've worked specifically on higher ed outreach for the 92I, the founders of Giving Tuesday. And just wanted to point out before we get started that, Givingtuesday.org is a terrific website that you can visit to see some of those free resources that I mentioned. We continue to publish free resources. We have a large network of partners. We also add their resources to this website. So just wanted to make sure you were aware to check that out. We're going to highlight some of the resources today as well, so I'll come back to this. But, one of the things that I get to do with my vantage point is I get to see some really inspiring campaigns and identify some best practice case studies that I get to bring to our higher ed audience, so folks tuning into this discussion today. Today we have one of those campaigns and its leader to share with you. You're going to hear how CUNY planned their first system-wide campaign last year, and we're also going to share some of those planning resources that we actually put into practice, including a workbook that the CUNY team used during their initial kickoff meeting, which really helped to get the team organized, as well as a terrific spreadsheet that the CUNY team pulled together and used to schedule all of the team meetings that they conducted from last July, I believe, through Giving Tuesday and beyond in December. And you're going to be free to download all of those tools from the website. It's been really exciting to watch Giving Tuesday continue to grow steadily over the last 5 years. And just wanted to highlight that last year we had 98 countries and territories participate by our count. Millions of people worldwide were donating to some tremendous organizations and institutions. And we're also giving volunteer hours and hosting some really other incredible acts of inspired activity and giving on the day. We also watched 85 different community coalitions across the United States participating with campaigns. I mentioned I was part of the Baltimore campaign in 2013, but since that time we've just seen a tremendous rallying of communities across the country. And one thing I wanted to highlight for 2017 that we're hearing is some additional higher ed leaders are joining together in those 85 community coalitions to create even bigger impact in those communities and cities. So we're really looking forward to watching that unfold. And as you can see from the graphic on screen, the impact is real. This data comes from a number of Giving Tuesday partners, and it shows that Giving Tuesday continues to grow as far as donors are concerned. What we see is donors are definitely looking for places to engage and give on Giving Tuesday, and we're seeing growth continue in donations, number of unique donors, social media engagements, and as I mentioned before, some of those really incredible acts of generosity. And what we've observed overall over the last 5 years is that organizations who plan ahead to participate on Giving Tuesday are really better able to capitalize on this behavior and host successful Giving Tuesday campaigns. And that leads us to today's discussion. 24 CUNY schools participated in their system-wide Giving Tuesday campaign in 2016. And I believe it's a fact, we can confirm that this was their first centrally led system-wide Giving Tuesday campaign. And today we're joined by one of the visionary leaders who directed the CUNY Tuesday campaign last year. Rick is Campaign Officer, Development and Alumni Strategies at CUNY, And today he's going to share how they planned the campaign. He's also going to explain how they coordinated their leadership team across those many schools, how they decided on their goal and their branding, and we'll also hear some of his 2017 plans and some lessons learned. Rick, I'm really thankful for having you join us today. As I mentioned at Giving Tuesday, we were really inspired by the CUNY campaign last year. We were thrilled to participate with you and your team in the planning and really to watching as your system joined together to build momentum toward the big day. Before we dive into questions, though, I was wondering if I could turn it over to you to tell the audience a little bit more about CUNY and your role at CUNY.
Hi, Heather. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you're listening to this broadcast. CUNY is the nation's largest urban university system, and we have 24 colleges. They're two-year community colleges, four-year institutions, as well as professional schools that make up the CUNY system. And my role, in the role of the office here, we have just concluded a $3 billion campaign that ran for 10 years. We raised $3 billion at CUNY. And now we're continuing that momentum to develop other operations and initiatives to build awareness and engagement and, of course, fundraising opportunities for our colleges and very specifically for our students, for student success. Student success is a key driver to the work that we do centrally and with our colleges.
Great. Thank you. So I remember a little bit, just kind of throwing it back a year. Remember, it was about a year ago when you initiated the campaign meetings. I think it was about this time last year anyway. And I know I attended one of those meetings. I was fortunate to be there. And just, kind of being honest with ourselves, there was a little bit of initial skepticism from a few folks in the room, which isn't really surprising considering how large the system is and, really how overwhelming a large-scale campaign can seem at first. And we've seen that, from our vantage point, working with lots of schools and organizations. And I think folks on the line can probably relate to that as well, which is why I mention it. So I thought, we'll just dive into some questions that we've received from our higher ed audience and talk through those and see how you adjust, that little bit of skepticism and how you really pulled together such a successful first-year campaign. So let's dive in. First question that we get from our higher ed audience is, why and when did CUNY decide to host a Giving Tuesday campaign?
So our colleges experimented in participating individually with Giving Tuesday, but not collectively. So of our 24 colleges, I think we had 4 colleges that in 2014 and maybe even prior to that tried to participate on that day to raise awareness and support for our students. In 2015, I did a very informal reach out to the institutions, to our colleges, provided them with some very basic and core communication tools and said, hey, take part in the day and let's see what happens. Received some positive feedback from the colleges that engaged. But the real turning point was, and we saw there was opportunity for sure, but the real turning point was we run a philanthropy forum, which is an internal program for our colleges. We do this once a year. And one of our guest speakers was Asha Curran from the 92Y to talk specifically about Giving Tuesday and the opportunities there. That presentation generated much wider interest centrally and at our colleges. And from that, we were introduced to Jamie McDonald and Generosity Inc., as well as Heather, and they provided us with some pro bono guidance and resources to enhance and kick us off and give us some light to where we can move forward and be a bigger part of the day. To address what you said a little earlier about the colleges looking and being a little skeptical, This campaign, the one that we ran last year, was really the very first time that a cohesive campaign, university-wide campaign, was run with the colleges. So where we pulled all the colleges together and we created and built a campaign that was face forward, all of us at one time. And I think some of the skepticism was the fact that some of the colleges didn't think we could pull that off, and
Right.
they were a little, yeah, and they were a little bit visual to, well, what can we provide to them with tools and resources. So combined with a real honest effort centrally, and the guidance and the work from Generosity Inc. and Heather and Jamie, we were able to gain more and more confidence as we had more and more conversations with our colleagues across the colleges.
So, Rick, when was that forum? When did this seed get started? You mentioned the philanthropy forum, but not the actual month of the year.
Yeah, so that was in April. So that was April of that year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We didn't really give ourselves a lot of time. Planning and being prepared for this campaign is very key. It takes a wide breadth of resources, but it doesn't take intensive resources, if you will. But you need time to plan and to get your strategy and get your case together. So we were engaged. Asha and the experience that I had with the year prior and feeling a little bit of that positive traction really motivated us to engage all of our colleges and almost sell this in a way to the institution that we'd want to brand this as a CUNY event and be part of it with all of our colleges.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the team. Some of our audience members, this is going to be their first year, and sort of foundational thinking, like who should be on the team to be successful. So thinking across the CUNY campaign, did you loop in communications? Did you loop in administration? Did you loop in student affairs or social media or IT? Just kind of talk to us a little bit tactically, like who's on the team to help bring this together?
Right. So we started the genesis of the team. So the team were representatives of all of our colleges and from the central office. Everything you mentioned, all those points of contact, were part of the campaign. So we had communications, obviously development offices, the alumni offices and the alumni directors were part of this as well, because our alumni were some of the key participants in the day in giving back. Social media centrally and at the colleges. So we had a central message that we were trying to push out so we can gather interest on a very wide breadth and then drill that down to the college level. Again, because this is a system-wide campaign, we did not raise money centrally. The money that we raised was at the college level and focused on student success. So we did not have an option even for people to give centrally. It was driven down to the colleges. So everything was almost mirrored. The work that we did centrally with communications, alumni, development, our student groups, even athletics, and the IT teams were at the central office and then at each of the institutions. Now, our institutions are of different size and different scope, different resources at those institutions. So sometimes a single person is both the development person and the alumni person, and sometimes the communications person. And then some of our institutions, they have a multiple of that. So we had to put the teams together and communicate. So we started with leadership teams first. So I reached out, talked to the colleges, and said, let's start. Who will be your leader? Who's going to be your point person? That when we start talking about a plan and the components of that plan on your campus, then you will roll those people in, and then we'll create a larger CUNY Tuesday. That's what we called it. That's what we branded it, CUNY Tuesday team. And that's what I did. So it was all those components. It's very important. uh, to have a matrix that includes communications, heavy on your social media, to get ambassadors and volunteers from your students, your student athletes, running events, and your alumni.
Okay, great. So just to restate what I heard. So for the team itself, for each campus, there was one quarterback or one leader, if you will. And then that person may play multiple roles or also has their own partners within their campus. So you had, you had a lot of people involved, but really the key to success, it sounds like, on the team was having that one designated leader for each campus who could then sort of drive the campaign down to other partners.
Absolutely. And we even had some campuses that had two leaders, if you will, just as a point. It wasn't just, it wasn't so restricted that we only allowed them to have a leader. It was a function at the campus which would be the most effective.
Got it. Okay, so you're a widespread campus community. Let's talk a little bit tactically about the planning and the meetings that you had. Again, our audience might be their first year doing it. They want to coordinate something where they have a bunch of partners as well. How did that first meeting go, and then your subsequent meetings? Did everybody meet face-to-face? Were these conference calls? Yeah. Was there an agenda circulated? Tell us a little bit about, actually how these planning meetings occurred.
Absolutely. That'd be great. The very early on, the first meetings were conference calls. So the first meetings that we had to introduce the idea, to get some feedback on the pulse and the temperature of the campuses, to see if they would participate, was very important to us that we had robust participation at the college level, meaning, of the 24 colleges, we wanted them to participate, to be part of this. Having a cohesive, connected campaign that represented all of CUNY and all of New York was a motivator internally to get central services on board, because they're not always on board on these projects, and to drill that down and get the planning and the process working at the campus level. So we started all of that with conference calls. And once we felt that, we were going to be committed to this, meaning that the colleges were going to be on board and actually dedicate staff and show up to meetings, then we started having in-face meetings. So we'd have an in-face meeting, a large group meeting, and that was an expanded population of all the people that would be involved in the CUNY Tuesday, the Givingtuesday day. So the communications people and the alumni people and IT and events, etc., they came to the in-person meetings. When we first started talking about engaging in a giving platform, there's, where they would secure their gifts from, and it was one platform that we provided to all of the colleges. IT would be involved, and some of the webmasters would be involved as well. So we started off with very specific, very strategic conference calls with a smaller team, and then we created a calendar, and we rolled out these larger meetings. So we met once a month with the larger meetings, and they all had very specific designed topics, and then we followed up those meetings with conference calls to get feedback and then just do some more forward planning for the next stage.
Got it. Okay, that's fabulous.
There's a lot of people. It's hard to visualize maybe, but there's a lot of people involved. We're talking about, 24 institutions, right? So we have, say, 30 people as a leadership committee, and then multiply that by 5 to 6 as our team, as the big team. So we have 150 or so people plus that we have to, keep on plan, support each other when a college may be excelling or falling behind, right? We work to help each other and raise our hands and say, hey, how do you get that done? And we work together as a team. It was a really great experience in starting from not having a team to building a fairly large team and having a successful day. And it was because of the dedication and the work and the efforts of everybody that was participating in it.
Well, that's terrific. Okay, well, great. So really appreciate you walking us through that, understanding we had that initial sort of strategic leadership meeting. We made some decisions there, and then as the campaign planning unfolded, that you kept in touch continually to make sure everything was moving forward. People could check in if they needed extra help or offer capacity maybe if they were ahead of the game. And I also thought you made a good point that, you know, from time to time you would have to loop in others. So once you started thinking about technology, that introduced some additional partners who we wanted to get their expertise in the discussion. So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
So
And if I just may, on this topic, one of the tools that was provided to the team was this planning calendar. And the planning calendar was important because a lot of people walked into the campaign have never done this, right? So they didn't know, not for any other reason, but they just didn't know what to do and then what to do next and where they should be in their process to set themselves up to have a successful day. So working with Heather, with your team, and getting a large overview of what needs to get accomplished by when. We created this calendar and we pushed this out. We provided that. The meetings and the calls obviously worked lockstep with the calendar. So if there's a dozen things we had to accomplish over that 4 or 5 month period, when we met and when we talked together as a group, we were lockstep with those the goals that we were trying to fulfill and accomplish and where we were. And then we also reached out to see if anybody needed assistance. And then we used the resources we had, we were provided to help our colleagues, get up and move forward.
Yeah, I think that calendar that you created really gave a lot of schools confidence that this could be done successfully, and it really helped them, see how this could fit into their already busy routines. And so for our audience that's listening, you can also download this spreadsheet that we're talking about and customize it for your own campaign. It's really a terrific tool. And I'll share my email at the end of this discussion as well. If for some reason you couldn't find it on the website, you can absolutely reach out to me to get it. So let's move on to the next thing. So at that strategic meeting, we talked about who should be on the team, that we were excited to be pulling the campaign together. And then we shifted into some big decisions, or at least some discussion around big decisions. And one of those is goal setting. We see from our vantage point that this can often be like a really crucial first step at rallying an organization or an institution. And so I'm curious if you might be able to just describe for the audience, what did your team consider when it came to goals? Did you consider a couple of different goals? How did you finally settle on your goal? Did each school have its own goal, or was there one goal? So just kind of talk to us a little bit about the goal setting discussion and what you settled on and how, if you don't mind.
No, our colleges have a different complexion, right? So we have some brand new institutions, and we have some stalwarts that have been here for a very long time, and they have a very strong and rich history of philanthropy and raising money, right? So we have a wide breadth of, if you look at it, almost a different client at each campus, right? So when we talked about goals, some of the campuses, some of the colleges were very, very comfortable, looking at the dollar amount. Hey, how much money can we raise from this? And then we had some campuses that were looking at engagement, volunteerism. Maybe we can get, one of our smaller community colleges was just trying to get some engagement and have students show up to an event and to get some mentors. So the goals were not necessarily common at each college, and we did empower each of the colleges to create their own goal. We did not dictate a goal to the colleges. We allowed them to come back and say, working without a net at some level, because we've not done this before. Some of the colleges, some of them, did not have any prior experience in crowdfunding or raising money through social media or online. So they didn't know what to expect. So we were open, and we had long conversations about what the goal at the college would be. And it was a conversation. It was allowing them to come to us and say, this is what we're thinking, and this is what we're comfortable with. And my position on that was to accept what the colleges came to us with, and then stretch that goal. So take the number cumulatively, and then for a CUNY position saying, hey, we have a goal of, we'd like to raise this amount of dollars this day. The platform that we use, the giving platform that we use, allowed the colleges to talk about, promote, and tally their goals on each of their individual pages. And at the same time, the master page, the landing page, if you will, the central page, shows cumulative giving, number of gifts and total dollars. I was personally more excited about succeeding in executing the day more than specifically the number of dollars that we raised. Clearly, the number of dollars that you raise goes and supports our students and helps our students' success levels, provides resources that they need. Very important. But I knew this was a stepping stone to the next campaign and then the next campaign. And if our colleagues came out of this campaign feeling like it was success, even with questions, even with, hey, we need to tweak this or change this, that was fine. Let's just have a successful event and have it a university-wide event. And that was the experience. So we got the numbers, right? And we made a dollar goal. We made $1 million goal that we promoted publicly to raise. And most of all of our colleges exceeded their own institutional goal. So at the campus level, what they say they were trying to raise, they raised and exceeded it. Some by, a large percentage.
Well, that's exciting. That's great. And I love that you had the other subtle goal of just being able to execute the day, sort of build that capacity of how that collaborative effort could actually happen and come together, and the schools helping each other. I think that's a terrific subtle goal.
When you're building something that you want to be a foundation for, increased visibility, engagement, and to have the colleges, in our situation of system-wide viewpoint, they come back and say, hey, wow, that was pretty good. That worked. We were skeptical. Remember, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We didn't think we could, pull this off institutionally. And that was just one of the goals. So, yeah, you can have many different types of goals. And we had some of the colleges that were just trying to get engagement, mentorship, some ambassadors, and engagement more than dollar raising, because they have a very, very young alumni base.
Oh, that's great. Well, let me move into the last question on this slide that we get at this stage of the game, which is around branding. And so I remember, again, in the early planning, the strategic planning meeting, we had some early discussions around, what that might look like, what it might say. It's definitely one of those items that sort of once you settle on it, it can really anchor a campaign and drive momentum. And so I was just wondering if you could share with our audience, what were some of the discussions around branding, and how did you ultimately settle on the CUNY Tuesday brand?
Branding was one of our full team in-person meeting conversations. So we have so many talented and creative people that work for CUNY that wanted to have some input and provide feedback. We had so many great ideas for branding. So we had the visual branding, which I think we saw a slide prior, a little bit of a skyline view, that what's in the middle there, and then we had the hashtag branding, which was CUNY Tuesday. Below that, if we look at that slide, there is also says support the American Dream Machine. So there's a couple of things happening there. The team, it was a team effort that came up with the CUNY Tuesday. We talked for a long period of time in a large room with a lot of people, and we came down with a few ideas, and we narrowed those down. And then we had a further discussion to see the viability of all the ideas, and that's what we came up with. So it was not a dictated, did not come from central. It was very important to me that the team was part of that decision. You have a lot of people. Did everybody love that idea? Probably not. but now we do because it's ours and we own it.
Yeah.
The tagline to that, support the American Dream Machine, would only be used for that year's campaign because that was a CUNY initiative that was happening during what we call CUNY month. So that was a sub tie-in to what was happening on our website. That will not be part of the forward campaign, but the visual that you see, that skyline and the CUNY Tuesday, is something that we're going to, use as a branding and hopefully begin to get recognitions from that. And, and people will see that and connect it to that Giving Day. That's the idea. But how we did that was really a team effort. Yes, some decisions had to be made at the very end, and that's where we wound up. And even when you look back at it, we're very comfortable with it. We're very happy with the way that came out. We like the idea of tying CUNY Tuesday to Giving Tuesday for that, the connection, clearly, but also making CUNY a very strong part and a very strong focus of the day. We want to be a presence of our own in itself on that day.
Great. Thanks for stepping us through that. We know that sometimes can have a lot of conversation on a campus or in an organization, and it's great that you were able to do a collaborative session around that and come up with something so terrific.
It was a great process.
Sorry, okay, we have just a couple more questions. The audience is interested in what you're thinking about 2017. So, year one under your belt. You had a terrific first campaign. So can you tell us a little bit about where you are with 2017 planning? As we're recording this discussion, it is June. So where are you?
I'm very happy to say we're way ahead of where we were last year. I would say in 2016 we had a late start, just in conceptually saying we're going to do this. We're going to do a university-wide campaign, an all-inclusive, right? And then we had to secure a giving platform, and we work for a state institution, and there's very, very specific rules and regulations we apply to our procurement issues. So that took a little time, and it was successful, but again, that started later than we wanted to start. So where are we already? We've already had a series of calls, of our conference calls with the leadership team. We've talked about some things. We've talked a lot about the results from last year. Some of the, if you will, the rules that we're going to play by this year. As example, when will we shut the day down? Meaning, we'll open and we'll try to promote the day leading up to the day, accept some gifts. Obviously, if there's a challenge or match, and then we'll close the campaign out. But exactly when? So we want to have clarity, be very, very clear on that. Have no questions. Because what happened was, and this was a good part of the campaign, was the colleges got a little competitive. They wanted to, win the day and have a great standing, which was something that internally here we were not sure how that would ride out and how our colleagues would feel about being competitive with each other on this day, but they were, and it was very natural. So the conversation was, okay, when do we start counting gifts? When can we end the gifts? So those are the conversations we've had already, and that puts us way ahead of last year. They're comfortable with the concept, so we don't have to really retrain them on what we're doing and what our goal is and what the positioning needs to be. So it's really fantastic in that regard. We're much more positioned. We've had some leadership calls already, and we have a full team meeting that's slated for July. And that puts us, again, that conversation in July will be very specific to communications and the plan, and making a plan that we're all going to stick to clearly, but re-emphasizing the importance of communications and the social media in developing their plans, and inviting those colleagues at the campuses to be there. So those that are in communications, those are part of their social media teams.
Okay, great. So I think we've covered 1 and 2 that I have on the slide, starting earlier this year. So as I mentioned, a good number of our audience members are first-year campaign leaders, or maybe it's the second year and they're looking to do something more substantial. Do you have any advice? You've covered quite a bit. There's been some terrific advice, but just curious if there's anything else you might want to share for a first-time campaign leader, having been through it yourself.
Yes. So the day comes and it goes, right? So the planning is really, really key. Making a plan, getting it written down, because I think if you don't see it, it's harder to digest and realize that you can succeed in having a very successful day. So that's the start. I would say start with that, and it's great that we're providing resources so people can look at, okay, what could be part of that plan, right? What do we need to get done? Aside of that, I think there's 3 keys to a successful day. It's communications, it's cause, and simplicity. Not in any particular order, but those are 3 keys. So communication, robust, relentless social media. Most of our gifts and everything that came online for this campaign was driven by something that somebody saw, read, and clicked through and came to the giving page. Read a story, decided they wanted to participate, and made their donation. Keep your messaging in tuned to the medium, so you have some limitations if you're using, Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. You have those limitations, but stay within the medium, keep your message on point, and then simplicity, make it very, very easy for someone to make a donation. A lot of the donations you're going to receive are people that are using a handheld device. So you want to make sure your donation process is simplified to the lowest number of click-throughs possible with the least amount of data entry. The worst thing we can have is someone get to that donation page and just abandon it because it's too much work, it's not clear, and it's not simple. So map that out, plan it, and if you're going to draw a flow chart of somebody making a donation, look at every point where you could potentially take out an action or another click or another step. It's very, very important. And then you cause. You want to connect to your audience. You want to give them a reason to make a gift. A very strong motivator and a great asset to your campaign would be a matching or a challenge grant. It's a way to engage maybe your corporate and foundation friends or individual donors that will step up and provide a match or a challenge. And then it gives a lot of motivation. It gives you also material to communicate out. So if you have a match, and on that giving day, gives you a reason to push out, hey, we're 50% of our goal, we're 25% of our goal, or dollar amounts. And it motivates people to click through and say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about making a gift. This is going to push me over. I want to double my gift, maybe, potentially, right? But I also want to help them make their goal and hit their grant, hit their challenge. So those 3 things: the communication, keeping the process very, very simple to make a donation, and then your cause. We've noticed that the funds that we raised money for on Giving Tuesday, the ones that connected directly to the students, so if you might call it gap funding or a hardship fund, did very, very well. Scholarships, when appropriate, did very, very well. And it's a feel-good day when people decide to make a gift on that day. And I learned this from our friends from Heather and Jamie, that Giving Tuesday is one of the 3 days on our calendar that people look to make a gift. So if they're looking somewhere to make a gift, they want to feel an emotional connection. So when you're thinking about what fund and what opportunity you can provide for someone to support your organization, your institution, your students, you give them that reason. Let them connect to it and make it a very personal thing.
That's great. Thank you so much for elaborating on those three pillars. I totally agree with you. Just from
Yeah.
all of the campaigns we've witnessed, that sounds like really good advice and definitely some universal things that you discussed there. I wanted to highlight a couple. You mentioned the importance of matching funds, and I know that's something you guys are working towards this year. You mentioned technology, and just for our audience, I wanted to share that we will have some additional recorded discussions with other campaign leaders as well on those two topics coming in this series of recorded discussions. So stay tuned for those. Rick, really want to thank you so much for taking this time, sharing your experience. We'll be providing the tools that you referenced to this audience as well. Before we close up, just curious if there's any other sort of aha moments or any last lessons learned or personal anecdotes you wanted to share, or have we about covered it?
Well, actually, sure, yes, one for sure. You never know. So we have 24 institutions. We've never had a campaign where we took all 24 university-wide. We have centrally when you went to that CUNY.edu site, there we were promoting the day. We were drilling down to our colleges and our students. And we had a lot of our colleagues were really almost, it was the unknown. What's going to happen? They raised their hand. They said, you know what, Rick? We're in. Let's do this. But we don't know what's going to happen. And the excitement that we felt collectively when we hit little triggers, when the college had their giving page up, right, their donation page, we're like, wow, I didn't think we can get this done, and we got it done, and it looks pretty good. We actually like that. Or when one of our community colleges just totally kicked it and raised 10 times more money than they thought they were going to raise. Literally 10 times the amount of money. That when I first had the conversation with them, they gave me their goal. I accepted it. Who knows what to expect? And within 2 weeks later, we got to double that goal. And they doubled it again. So, and they exceeded their final goal that they set. So those are the things. You'll surprise yourself. And you'll take those really, really positive events and you'll look at that for your next year's planning. And then you'll take those things that you said, man, maybe it didn't work, whatever that was, or we weren't clear on that. We pushed this out. Can we measure it? Try to measure things whatever you can. If you're sending out emails, can you measure your open rates and your click-through rates? You'll look at those things. But the one thing that really surprised me most was the excitement that individually the campuses had in participating in this campaign. And then from a year ago where they were saying, kind of show us, we don't think it's going to happen, to, hey, when are we starting? We're ready. We want to know when's our first call? When's our first meeting? So yeah, those are very wide eye openers, and it excites us for this year to do even better than we did last year.
Oh, that's great. I love that the team was able to celebrate all those wins along the way. And then I know on the day itself, it's really exciting to watch that progress. So that's terrific. I can recall that myself from the Baltimore campaign. It was just a really momentous feeling. Yeah, I was a couple days after Giving Tuesday, we were like, okay, when do we start for next year?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely a great feeling. Great. Well, for the audience, we've mentioned some tools. If there was questions that you have that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out to me. I've included my email address here on the last screen. It's hfieldsmarketing@gmail.com. And as I mentioned, if you go to the givingtuesday.org website, we have just a plethora of free resources and tools, but we are happy to also come up with additional tools for you. So hfieldsmarketing@gmail.com is the place to reach me. And Rick, thanks again. We really appreciate you sharing how the campaign came together, and we'll look forward to checking in with you again for 2017 and wish you the best.
Yes, thank you so much, Heather. Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a fabulous afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.